Underwriting for the Money Doctor Show is provided by Regari Real Estate, Federal Street, Greenfield, a third-generation real estate agency serving the Pioneer Valley. Ryan and Casey Liquors, Main Street, Greenfield. Exploring the world, one glass at a time. West County Equipment Rental of Shelburne. Daily, weekly, monthly rentals. 625-6463 or on the web at westcountyequipment.com. The Franklin County Community Development Corporation. Growing sustainable businesses and communities since 1979. www.fccdc.org. Weld Communications, Marketing and Publicity. Helping businesses spread the word in the Pioneer Valley and beyond. www.weldwords.com.
There's a better life if I could be debt free, but all my money is a mystery. I was feeling overwhelmed and it was wearing thin when I knocked on the door and heard the doctor's in. Oh, the doctor's in, the doctor's in. She got the right prescription to help you win. Oh, the doctor's in, the money doctor's in.
Hello and welcome to the Money Doctor Show. I'm Dr. Frances Rayam, president of Power Down Debt, a positive debt management company. And my guest today is Ginny Ray from the Shelburne Falls and West County Independent Papers. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Fran, for having me.
My pleasure. Now, I have to say, starting off, I know people who come to the show are sometimes nervous, and they come at their own accord to do this because of my sales pitch, which is please come on my show and tell people things that I think are helpful, and that's all about life experience. I think anybody watching the show who is passionate about an idea, wants to start their own business, maybe just wants to make ends meet, or feel that soul food of art or whatever it is that drives them, has something to learn from someone else who's done it. So, give me some idea, if you will, about your background. What led to you owning a local newspaper, a very small, independent local newspaper?
Well, a long road, actually. I had written in almost every form, every genre of writing throughout my career. I started off, excuse me, working for the World Affairs Council in Philadelphia right out of college.
The World Affairs Council?
Right.
What do they do?
They put on incredible programs with world leaders coming to Philadelphia it's an educational group for folks of all ages.
Okay.
And once a week, I would go into the local bank, which was a large bank, into a room with a gigantic machine called an IBM composing machine, and put together the program announcement, the layout, the design, and write it. But
Wow.
it was just me and this behemoth machine.
You and IBM.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me and IBM and Fidelity Bank. And then I went on from there to work for an advertising company, and I wrote TV, radio, and print. In fact,
The copy for TV, radio, and print
Yes.
advertising. Wow.
In fact, Wendy's Hamburgers and US Air, where I wrote some of their first ads.
Oh, give me an example. What did you write?
I have no idea.
Oh,
No
you
idea.
don't?
No
But you
idea.
wrote some of their first ads.
That was a long time ago.
Oh, that's interesting. Were you responsible for the little girl with the braids and the...
No, that was Wendy.
Oh,
I
thank
was
goodness.
told that I had to work with Wendy.
Thank goodness.
So, yeah.
Did you?
And she's all grown
Poor
up.
Wendy when she grew up, right? Exactly.
She's all grown up now. She was able to get rid of the braids, the
Wow.
Pippi Longstocking type braids.
Yeah. Pretty impressive, though, for
But
advertising.
It was great.
To
Well, it
write
was
advertising
wonderful.
copy.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I loved that, doing that. And then I took a break and went to a different kind of writing, some PR writing and publicity for a ski resort in
really?
Pennsylvania. And then I took a job as the liaison for the United States to the Liberty of London Company, which is a British fabric house that at the time was opening 5 shops in the States. And so on the ground floor, I was able to write copy, do advertising, do window displays, start a mail order program, lots of different things, but it was always related to writing.
Yes, but I'm seeing all the plates in the air, right?
Yeah, a lot of.
Wow.
And so then ultimately way led to way, and I moved here. And this was a different thing. I'd lived in the suburbs and gone to the city, in New York City once a week to do work, so.
Right.
I remember the late realtor Dick Dills telling me that it's not unusual for people here to have 3 jobs, and because they love the area, but
right.
jobs are you have to travel to find a job unless
Sure.
you work for one of the larger employers like the school district or something.
Huh.
So I saw an ad for a copywriter, a newspaper, and I took it. And I got the job and worked for an area daily for 11 years.
Wow.
And then I just decided to take a break.
Yep.
And the very next day, a fellow who I knew a little bit called me and said,
Enough break.
"Do you want to write
Get to work.
That's enough. Do you want to start a new newspaper?"
The next day.
Honest to goodness truth.
Well, that's one thing you don't get in the city. In a small town,
Right.
word travels fast. You were no
Beyond.
sooner done with the daily paper than the word was on the street already.
Right, and I had no clue that this was happening.
Sure.
None at all, none at all. There was a weekly paper, but so Jeff Potter is his name, and it was his dream to start this new paper, and so he did.
It was Potter's Field.
Yes, Potter's Field. Well, he's not
Pottersfield.
in the Potter's Field.
No.
But yeah, and he's an extraordinary fellow. He at a very young age had lots of newspaper experience. He's truly a newsman, believes in community journalism, as do I. And so that's what we did. So we started a bi-weekly paper because, of course, it's expensive to run a newspaper, even a
Sure.
little community newspaper.
Right. And I mean, that's the sort of stuff that I think people don't, first of all, thanks for that great story, but I think people don't I think the layman doesn't understand what it takes to put out a newspaper besides getting a bunch of articles and somehow, rolling it up in something that,
Right.
that you throw at somebody's door. You must have to either have enormous equipment or pay somebody else to print it. How do you resolve all that? How does somebody start an independent local newspaper?
Well, with a lot of moxie, I guess, and maybe a wish and a prayer, but and some money helps. And we did have a loan, and we did have some contributions from other persons.
Sure.
And truthfully, it's been hard to pay those back.
Yeah.
The lifeblood of a newspaper is its advertising, really, and that's the sticking point in this kind of economy for sure.
Right.
Plus, the overhead is really genuine. It's not, if we wanted to do a newsletter
Right.
and run it on a mimeograph machine,
That's a different
practically, that's a different
publish it,
story.
on the web, but this is real
Right.
bricks and
But-
mortar printing.
Right, and we still do a broadsheet because we like a broadsheet, and
Right.
we have it printed at the Gazette,
Right.
which prints lots of area newspapers because the investment in the printing
Right.
press is so huge.
Yes.
So, but there's postage, there's your office, there's the utilities, there's the server, there's the delivery, labeling, printing, and then of course, people would like to be paid.
Yes. You just mentioned the Gazette, and it makes me think of a tie that you and I have recently, and you may not even know it, but I was contacted for an article. They were doing an article on our company.
Oh.
And the woman who called me, Chris Carl, she was wonderful, by the way,
Good.
said to me immediately when I said, "Do you know Ginny Ray?" She said, "Oh, that was my first reporting job." Were you there? The West County Independent, I think, she said was one of her first
I think
reporting
that
jobs.
might be the West County News.
Oh, you know what? She did say
The
West County News.
the
Now,
weekly.
that's the paper that is no longer, and West
Right.
County Independent is in place of it
Right.
now, more or less. Or
The West County News had been started, I want to say now, probably
West County
28 years ago by
Wow.
Mike Bacalar, Elsa Mike Bacalar. Oh no, the Mitchies. The Mitchies were in there. Maybe they started it. I can't even remember. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But over
I had
the
the
years-
wrong name, so.
No, it's okay. Over the years, after many years with those two couples running it, it changed hands, and there were shorter-term publishers. And finally, it went to a company that has a lot of little papers, mostly in the East. It's a family company,
Yep.
but the mix wasn't right. And so, at any rate, a couple of years after we started the bi-weekly, the West County News went out of business, essentially.
Right.
And we were asked if we would buy the paper for what we thought was an exorbitant amount of money, and certainly we didn't have it.
Yeah.
So we made the business decision not to do that. But it was going out of business no matter what we
Right,
did, and
right.
we didn't have the resources to help in that way. So we did take on as many writers as we could, but we already had a stable of writers as well. So
Sure.
it was hard because people were used to that and very loyal to it, those who were. And
Right.
some read both papers and some didn't, just the way it was.
Yeah. Thank you. It's interesting that, of course, the way I got to talk to her about it,
Oh, yes.
and the way I met you, is that we print a blog, and
Right.
your paper publishes
Right.
it. So that's how I came to know you.
Right.
And that leads me to the word independent in your title. So tell me a little bit about that. When you're naming a newspaper, what makes you put the word independent in there? Because that's a big word to me.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
a big word, and we felt big when we did it in the way that we knew that there was a long-established weekly paper.
Yes.
But we were going to do a new paper. We were going to make a new paper and publish it, and we wanted it to be independent of that old thought.
Yes. See, now, I was wondering what you were going to say about that, because when I thought independent of these large, massive papers. I mean, we need this sort of, in my opinion, we need this community news.
Yeah.
You think the New York Times cares if I start a new company in, Shelburne Falls
Right.
or Greenfield or Turner's Falls?
Right.
No, they don't care.
Right.
It's not going to get any press. So that's what I think. But I'd love to hear what you think about independent papers and why they're so important to us. But before I let you go there, I'll save that for the second half of the show if I can.
Okay.
And I want to talk about how people can become involved if they want
that'd
to
be great.
support. That's
Thank you.
really what I want to talk about, because I think this is certainly about your passion and people that you work with who have a passion about printing this newspaper. But I know that you do it at great personal expense, both in time and money and effort, of course. And it's such a struggle, I think, for an independent paper or for a small paper, because there's this cycle of people advertise there, they pay advertising dollars to advertise in the paper if the paper has a lot of circulation. The paper doesn't get a lot of circulation without good copy. They can't get good copy because the copy is being written for the bigger papers who are paying bigger money. And it's this hamster wheel.
Very chicken and egg,
Yeah.
Mobius strip sort of thing, yeah.
What do you do about that? What are your
Pray.
thoughts on it?
You
pray?
Yeah, well, you do the best that you can.
Well, tell me about that. I mean, where do you think your first effort is? Is it getting the copy? Is it getting the advertisers?
The first effort really has been trying to get the news. But we realize that we do a lot of things, not wrong, but some wrong, but many things that could be improved on. We could be more frequent. We would love to be a weekly paper. We would love to cover more news. We would love to always have sports and always have education news and always have every single town in West County covered. But it is a really West County centric focus that we have. And that means we have a rather limited audience.
Right.
Still, people love getting their newspapers, and snowbirds get them in Florida and wherever they are, but people send them to kids at college, which is great.
Yep.
But the advertising, we do make pushes every once in a while, but we also find, it's a tough sell sometimes, because folks do expect in part that, well, if I give you my ad, then I'll get X in return.
Yeah,
and it's really partly...
It really doesn't work that way.
No, it's about, do you also want to have a community newspaper?
Right, and advertising doesn't work that way in almost any
Right.
advertising arena. You have to do it consistently over time with
Absolutely.
saturation and all of that to get it to work.
And we do have a lot of loyal advertisers without whom we would not exist, believe me.
Right, absolutely. So in terms of maybe bringing in new advertisers and things, I want to talk about that in the second part of the show. But one thing that you said that made me remember a story was when I was a little girl, all those many years ago.
Hardly.
Yeah, well, I can remember my family moved out from Boston, and so they were city mouse to country mice. And they got the biggest kick out of the Ware River News because it was a little small town paper, and they would open it up and the police log would say, car double parked in front of Friendly's or whatever,
yes.
right?
Horse in the road.
You bet. And they thought it was just a kick to get copies of that paper all the time and send them everywhere. It was one of the very inexpensive things that they could do to stay connected with their relatives. And when you said send them to Florida, that's exactly what I was thinking. They would send them to relatives in Florida, or even sometimes over to Scotland or Lebanon, where my family had come from originally. And that one little paper that at the time I think cost $0.25 was a connection for them.
Sure.
People saved it, people cut things out and made scrapbooks out of it. I think we miss that today with the internet. Even though we could print it out, most of the time we take it, nothing wrong with the internet, I'm all over the internet.
It's
but
part of
you take
life.
it and you save it to a file or whatever, and it's not quite the same as having that tangible paper.
The newsprint is something. for sure.
So when we come back, I want to talk to you further about not just the newspaper, but some book editing and some surprising things I found out about you. And the kinds of things that you do as a writer that really, I thought were impressive and surprising.
Okay.
So my guest is Ginny Ray from Shelburne Falls and West County Independent. We'll be back in a moment with more.
Underwriting for the Money Doctor Show is provided by Regery Real Estate, Federal Street, Greenfield, a third-generation real estate agency serving the Pioneer Valley. Ryan and Casey Liquors, Main Street, Greenfield. Exploring the world, one glass at a time. West County Equipment Rental of Shelburne. Daily, weekly, monthly rentals. 625-6463 or on the web at westcountyequipment.com. The Franklin County Community Development Corporation. Growing sustainable businesses and communities since 1979. www.fccdc.org. Weld Communications, Marketing and Publicity. Helping businesses spread the word in the Pioneer Valley and beyond. www.weldwords.com.
Hello and welcome back to the Money Doctor Show. My guest today is Ginny Ray from the West County and Shelburne Falls Independent Papers, and we're returning for a second half of our show, so thanks for sticking with me. I know it may not be fun for you, but you seem to be doing great with it. So
well, thank you. You're kind.
I'm happy to have you here. Well, you're a writer.
But not a public speaker.
That's what I was just going to say that. When I say to, my friend Eric, will you come and talk? He says, I'm a writer. I want to write. If I could get you to write it down, that'd be a piece of cake probably, right?
There you go,
okay.
Maybe.
So we get a little bit of your background. I know you run this independent paper. I know it's quite an unusual thing to do. And during the break I said, what you do is unusual. And you said, really? Maybe? Yes, maybe. How many people do you know that run a newspaper? Well, probably everybody runs a newspaper.
Right. Well, apparently there are at least 8,000 community newspapers, but that's some number sounds low to me. So
and it's really minuscule compared to the population number. I mean, when you think about it, what you do is very unusual. So when I find people are in that kind of profession, it's almost always that passion has driven that somehow. You don't run an independent newspaper because it's like winning the lottery, right? So talk to me about that. What happens under the radar? Under the grow lights. Yes, under the grow lights, yeah.
Well, I really, first of all, I'm stubborn. I think that's part of it. And I do have such lovely feedback. So much of the time we hear atta girls and atta guys for what we've done. Yeah. And I think people want it. You don't get to photograph Joe Davenport on the front page of the newspaper having coffee or whatever it was at the ice cream soda fountain that still exists at Baker Pharmacy every day. Right. And you don't get to put the bowling scores in every newspaper. Things like that. And it's not meant to be the New York Times. We don't want to, we couldn't be, we don't want to be, we don't think we are. That's right. But we could do more, and we're certainly trying and looking for ways to do that. But I think it is a passion. You believe in community journalism and you just want it to work. Yeah. When I was researching your bio a little bit, I started to think about, I would read one section and it would be, okay, she's a writer, and I would have you defined in my mind as a writer. And then I'd read another section and I'd say, oh, wait, she's a reporter. Oh no, wait, she's a book editor. I kept coming up with these, and they're all writing, but somehow that mix of experiences has brought you to this place. And off camera, you and I were talking a little bit about the book that we've been working on at Power Down Debt, and I said, I didn't realize you were a book editor, and can you look at that? And you put on a different hat instantly and said, okay, I'll do this now. Right. How many years have you been working with words? Oh, well, my entire career, really, so many. Let's just say. You won't say. I would have to count. That's a big number to count. I don't know. Okay, well, we won't do that math in my head. We won't make you. So straight out of college, though? Yes, as I said, I was doing the program announcements for the World Affairs Council, and then I went to the ad agency, and then I did take a little bit of break when I was working for the British company, but that still involved PR and publicity writing, and also developing a mail order thing, but it's a different kind of writing. Right. And so I was interested in news writing. It's a really great place to hone your skills. I'm not saying I'm the greatest at it by any means, but it certainly is. There's a book called Write Tight, and I think it's just the way to go. Really? Write tight. Just don't be overly verbose if you can help it. Say what you have to say. I find that
The art of brevity, et cetera, right?
Right, it's not easy to write well. And I think that's where Ernest Hemingway, Mark Twain, many famous writers honed their crafts, and in today's world too. Lots and lots of authors have started as news writers.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite author? When you started with Hemingway, I wondered.
No, I like Hemingway,
yeah.
But no, I have many favorite authors, really.
It's really interesting. What gets you up in the morning and makes you go, what time does your day start?
Deadlines.
Deadlines. Talk to me about deadlines. What happens when you know there's a deadline looming?
Well, with a bi-weekly paper, it's a little bit easier every other week. You know, it's not, but it's more than you would think. It's not really like you take a whole week off and then you just show up on Thursday, you know, before the issue. Plus, it's a double-edged sword because while you don't have the pressures of a daily, which I did have for 11 years, writing on deadline every day, you do have the pressure of being almost too much time out. And so you want to get the very latest as much as you can without killing, you know, the person who's helping you put the paper together, because the paginator has to put it on the page at the end of the day. So, so it's a lot of late hours, and it's a lot of, when you're trying to keep the cost down, it's also a lot of running around trying to do stories yourself, which is fine, but I don't want to be the whole front page of the newspaper.
And you're only one person, after
I want
all,
as many voices.
You want the variety, right?
As many voices in the paper as we could possibly have, yes.
Well, I did want to talk about that. What do you do about that? Do you invite independent writers to submit content?
Right, folks can contribute in so many different ways. Writers, well, anyone can send information for sure, and people do all the time. And not just birth announcements or wedding anniversary announcements, but they do give us other information.
I think about young writers, you know, trying to get their name out, and can they cover something and submit an article to you and possibly get published and then use that in their resume. I was published in this newspaper,
well, they
or whatever.
absolutely could. That has happened rarely, but it did happen once that we had.
I'm encouraging that. Folks, I'm encouraging that young writers to do something, even if they don't get paid for it, because it helps them. Oh,
internships, that would be wonderful. And we've only had a couple, but they were terrific.
Yeah.
Terrific. And of course we always write them a nice letter, and then they have that. But we've also solicited writers from the high school level, and sometimes that's worked. These kids are so booked though in high school, it's easier for a college student, I think, to have the time to offer something.
Really? That's too much homework and all this stuff, Yeah, it's true. If people want to contribute other than writing, in terms of supporting a local paper, and then I'm assuming advertising is your biggest, it's your biggest cash cow, right? I mean, that's where the money comes into the paper.
But we only have 26 issues a year right now, because we're bi-weekly.
Right.
And you can run an ad for as little as $10.
Okay.
So even if half the businesses in town put in a small ad in half the issues.
Right.
Or if, you know, businesses
that would help substantially, is what you're saying, right?
Right. And I also think that even though the population is not huge in West County, but the draw of Shelburne Falls and the village area and the shops and galleries there, we want people from outside of the area to come there. And so it's nice to get the word out that way as well.
Well, I think that's a huge point, is, you know, we tend to think of a local paper as being for the local people, and it is, but when you have a community like Shelburne Falls where there's a lot of transient art traffic, you don't have any idea who's going to see that and what that might be worth to them, or whether your ad will encourage them to come back for another vacation and visit your hotel, your store, your restaurant, whatever it might be. And so ads are really affordable at $10. I mean, that's
well, I mean, that's a very small ad,
but still,
you don't need a giant ad.
Well, it's a way for somebody who maybe hasn't advertised in the paper before to, for almost no risk, not only put an ad out and see how it does, and I would encourage them to commit to a period of time. Don't just throw one ad in and expect that the phone's going to ring. It might, but that's not how advertising works. But take a very small budget, which in this day and age, with this economy where it is really an issue, and get it stretched out because of being, you know, the amount of print that they can get for it at $10 or $20 or whatever an ad costs. And I'm assuming you'll help with them to make the ad, to create the ad so that
we create the ads.
Well.
We can build ads for free, we do. And we also offer a discount if folks take 6 or more ads. Plus, I would work with anyone just to have that other voice in a different way in the
Right.
newspaper.
Right.
But we also offer sponsorships, and we have 2 sponsorships now. Wanda Mooney from Upton Messmount Realtors
Okay.
is a wonderful supporter for our business page news.
Okay.
And the Greenfield Cooperative Savings Bank has been a terrific support for Joe
Nice.
Judd's column. And so we could use a supporter in that way, a sponsor for education news, for sports
Okay.
news, for so many other areas.
Right. Our blog is sponsored, in fact.
Yes, and
right.
your blog.
You know, with all the lovely
Right.
people that I run the names off with in the middle of the show with the ads. Those are all
There
the
you
same
go.
sponsors
That's
for the
right.
blog.
Absolutely.
So what would happen if somebody wanted to sponsor? That's a nice sort of warm and fuzzy to have.
It is.
They, for instance, I'm just making this up, but they sponsor the weekly sports report, or they sponsor the weather, or they sponsor something that costs money to put into your paper, but you're able to do it.
Well, that's it.
Just explain how they would do that. They would contact you and...
Just call the office, call me, right, and
Okay.
then we'll talk about what they want to do, and if they have a logo, if it's a business with a logo, or if it's another kind of underwriting by a private individual
Right.
or a family or a team or whatever, school, then we can work that out too, and we'll develop an ad that they like.
That's cool. Okay, we're almost out of time. We've got a couple minutes left, but I can't close the show without talking about the surprising things I found out about you.
I can't wait.
And I found out something more surprising on the break, that you ride a unicycle.
Yes.
I don't know what to say about that. You ride a unicycle.
It's been a while, but I think I can still do it.
That's
Yeah.
so interesting. What I found, not nearly as interesting, but still relevant, is that you will write. You're a writer at heart. I mean, you'll write resumes. I found this stuff on the web.
Yeah, yeah.
Resumes, web and ad copy. You work as a writing coach.
Yes.
A writing coach, very valuable. Homework editing and individual SAT coaching. I can't even say it. Individual SAT coaching.
Right,
There
and
we go.
I'm not alone in that. That's a very big thing now, especially in more populated areas. But absolutely. Well, you know, my godchildren have been sending me their homework at the 11th hour, as if
Yes.
they know. They seem to intuit that I'm on deadline with the newspaper, and that's when their reports
Yes.
are due. So
Of
they
course.
send them away.
Yeah.
And and I try, if there's time, I certainly try to work with them and get them to massage their
Sure.
own writing. But sometimes I just take out the machete.
Sure. Well, I had to mention those because I think it's at the core of what makes you tick. I think you love writing. You're doing an independent paper. You could be somewhere else, obviously, with your skills in the background. But you do it because you care about the area. You care about the community. I'm hoping that people who
I
see this
do.
show, yeah, I know you do. I can see
We
it
all
on you.
do. I mean, the staff
Yeah.
is wonderful. The people who contribute other things to us, some viewpoint columns and other columnists, they're incredible and smart and savvy and funny, and what they say is worth reading.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you. And I think that, I hope that people that see the show will support the paper besides just, you know, saying, oh, well, I support my local newspaper, I get a subscription. That's great, but advertise, provide content. Think about a sponsorship. That's a nice thing to be able to do.
Come and label papers if you feel like it. You
Come
know,
and label
people
papers. I
can
love
volunteer
this.
to do some tasks.
You know what
If
an
you have an
important
affordable
point.
space for us to live in, that would be a great help too.
Yeah,
we have
you're
a
looking
wonderful
for a new
situation,
home, right?
But we can always, if we could limit our costs, then we can just do more.
Good. Well, those are really important points. I can't thank you enough for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. So I hope you'll join me again next week on the Money Doctor Show when we interview another interesting local guest with some advice for us, I hope. Until then, keep it positive.
There's a better life if I could be debt free. But oh, my money is a mystery. I was feeling overwhelmed and it was wearing thin when I knocked on the door and heard the doctor's in. Oh, the doctor's in, the doctor's in. She got the right prescription to help you win. Oh, the doctor's in, the money doctor's in.